Hi everyone, you know I have the Witcher project. It's a lot of books. Uh, 5 books I've read so far. And I'm playing the Witcher 3 game. It's huge. Let's see if I will manage to finish it all. And then trying out some board games, which I've talked about here on the channel. Um, it's this one, Baptism of Fire, that I've finished, but this review or reflection on Witcher will concern all the books so far. Still, there will be no spoilers, almost no. If you don't want to hear anything of Witcher, turn it off. But I suppose Witcher is becoming as iconic as, maybe not as iconic as Lord of the Rings, but many people know about the stories. So maybe it's okay with a few small spoilers here and there. Um, I have this idea of the Witcher saga developing that it's a bit different from, let's say, Lord of the Rings and Malaz and Book of the Fallen, when you have these huge, epic fantasy where there is almost a historical foundation, archaeological foundation, lore foundation. In the beginning of the book, there is world building very early and characterization of the important characters and individuals comes later. Um, I think it's the opposite around. I will show you the books if you don't know about them yet. So the first book is The Last Wish, and this is a short story collection. Very good. It got me hooked. I read this one extremely quickly. In August, I had to check up when I started to read the Witcher saga. I'm a bit of a slow reader, as some of you know, but obviously Witcher has caught my interest and kept my interest as well. Then you have Sword of Destiny, also a short story collection. And when you read those short story collections, at least I thought maybe it wasn't so important to keep in mind what happened there, but Sapkowski is really good at tying the what is written into the Witcher saga. That is to say, the 3 following books after Sword of Destiny. He's a master, I think, in keeping the story tight, keeping the story connected, and starting the story from the small things. The small things we learn about Geralt and Dandelion, for example, and Yennefer in the short stories. Um, those have more of a fable-like character, I would say, and it's we learn about the monster, for example. We learn about Geralt's motives in the short stories. We learn about his adventures, his dynamic with other people, especially the dwarves, for example, in Bounds of Reason, which you can see a video together with I had a talk with Rick, who sometimes is a guest and a friend here on the channel. Um, so I think Sapkowski, he weaves the stories a little bit different than many other fantasy authors. He is though very inspired by Lord of the Rings and Tolkien, which I think you can see a lot in Baptism of Fire. And then the actual saga begins, and then that is with Blood of Elves, where the focus is it's a lot of foreshadowing. We learn a lot about um, the Blood of Elves, and we also learn a lot about Ciri, for example, Geralt, of course, but this is a lot of backstory, foreshadowing. I thought it was a bit difficult to get hold of and to really enjoy in the beginning because you come from the short stories, which are very quick, smart, humorous, action packed. I think he's a very effective writer, Sapkowski. He doesn't dwell on what he wants to say. It's not a lot of pages. He also very good at conversations, to so you get a picture of how certain characters react to each other, or how they behave, or what they think, or what they feel. I think he's very skilled at it. One of the best, I would say. Then you have the time of contempt, and there you go from the foreshadowing to actually certain events. Among many things, a great magic gathering, which will have very strong implications for the rest of the series. Um, I really enjoyed this one. I thought it caught me to really like the series. I was not so sold on this when I read Blood of Elves. I actually longed back a bit to the short stories. But in the Time of Contempt, Sapkowski is using a lot of the short story techniques. I think maybe in the Blood of Elves it was not so much of that as I remember now. I will try to reread them if I have the time later. But I think here it's more obvious that short story techniques is effective, and he's very good at doing that. And then we come to the book that I will talk about today more in detail, what I think, and that is Baptism of Fire. So, if the Blood of Elves was foreshadowing and the Time of Contempt was he introduced us to a lot of lore, the conflicts in the world, the rivalries between kingdoms and between different factions. I think the focus on Baptism of Fire is more of on the, I mean, it deepens that, of course, but it's also focused on the fellowship idea. And I think this one is most similar, I would say. I felt I recognized a lot of things in relation to Tolkien's writing or storytelling. Maybe because, I don't know, you have dwarves, you have elves, you have fights close to the water, or different kind of things. You have maybe sometimes certain expressions. They are not copied in any way, I would say, but it rings a bell to the Lord of the Rings. And also you have a fellowship, but this fellowship is put together in a more not so planned manner as in Rivendell, for example. This fellowship just happens. So here we follow Yennefer, what she's up to after the magic gathering in Time of Contempt. We follow Geralt on his hunt, or not hunt, but his search for Ciri. That's no spoiler, I would say. That's a common thing to know, but Ciri is the main focus, even not always being in focus. We follow Ciri, what's happened her after the Time of Contempt. It was a tragic ending in Time of Contempt, and Ciri was part of that. And she has a very tough time, I would say. Everyone is after her for different reasons, or for one reason mostly. And we also follow the Ciri, Yennefer, Geralt. That's the three we follow. There are other people here as well, but that's the main characters. That the story shifts between these three. And when it comes to Ciri, she has a very strange fellowship, I would say. I don't want to spoil anything, but if you've read this book, you know what I'm talking about. A kind of fellowship, not chosen fellowship, not a friendly fellowship. This is war, this is brutal times, and especially Ciri, I would say, is very, and she's caught in the brutal times, she's caught in the power struggles between kingdoms, and she's only Ciri, but people see more in her than maybe she wants them to, I would say. So that's one fellowship. Yennefer has a kind of fellowship, especially later in the book, which I won't tell you about here or spoil anything. Definitely not chosen, I would say. Still, the idea of community and striving for a similar goal. And also, Geralt has a community or a fellowship that I will mention the names here. So if you don't want to hear that, turn it off. Geralt has this very odd merry band he's adventuring with, and that is Melva, a ranger that he meets in the Broken Forest for different reasons. We have Dandelion, the poet. We have Zoltan, the dwarf, quite funny guy. We have Kair, a Nilfgaardian, and we have Regis, a vampire. So actually, the Fellowship of Geralt is not chosen either. They just happen to stumble on upon each other, basically, except Geralt and Dandelion, I would say. And even though it's a fellowship, it's not like the fellowship in Lord of the Rings. And I'm not sure if Sapkowski thought of this when he wrote the book, because all three, Ciri, Yennefer, Geralt, has different kind of fellowships. And none of them, I would say, would like to be in the fellowship or want to be in a group. They are basically very, very introvert people. They don't really want to be there, but they are forced to be there because of the political and historical circumstances that exist in this world. And so they are because ambivalent, avoidant, ambivalent. It's a bit interesting from a psychological point of view. They're just there. They are victims of their destiny, so to speak. And all these fellowship groups, they break the tropes of a fellowship in a fantasy book. You know, that kind of fellowship. They should be together. They should have a common goal. Everything should be funny and cozy, and there should be an evil, clear evil force they are fighting against. Now, in these fellowships, in this book, I think we get to know the individual motivations for being on these quests in this book, and usually, often the individual, like Geralt, like Kahir, Melba, and many others, they are conflicted. They are not there because they have a clear goal for being there. They are there because they have to, for different reasons, or they want to gain something for their own purpose. It's not. It's quite actually quite complicated if you think about it. It's not as complicated as Malazan Book of the Fallen, but it's definitely more complicated than Lord of the Rings, for example. It's not black and white. And I've written down a few things that I would like to touch upon. So if you're still here, I hope you will enjoy this. So as I said, we have this sense of fellowship in book and in the book, and as I said, the fellowship is it's another kind of fellowship idea if we think about the fellowship of the ring. I mean, we also have a lot of elaboration on by Sapkowski when it comes to questioning tropes. The obvious one, I think, is the vampire trope in this book, without saying too much. But um, as you know, there has been a lot of elaboration in earlier books on monsters. Who is the monster? And I think this is a continuation of that when it takes a classic monster that we humans fear, and that is very, very popular as well. In not at least in fantasy literature, the vampire. But he also, I think, has a nod to Tolkien because there are certain scenes in this book that reminds me of different scenes in Lord of the Rings, and with other outcomes. And it could be more egoistic motives, for example, or selfish motives, for example. It could be that the character doesn't feel the connection to these overarching story, to the purpose, what they're doing. They don't feel loyalty to that, or they don't feel loyalty to maybe the kingdom they belong to, for example. There is not this sense of identity. They are questioning this loyalty because they are loyal to themselves in many perspectives, but they are not always loyal to the cause. Um, that makes this book very different from many other fantasy books, I think. I think it makes this Witcher saga to stand out among one of the greatest, I think, with Malazan, as you know, Malazan, and you have the Lord of the Rings, of course, and then you have, I think, this one. I think those three are top three for me, at least so far. There are others in there, but I think these three are the best. What do you think? Please tell me. Baptism of Fire, as I said, is The first books are more individually focused and on the characters, on their ideas, motives, their dialogues, and so on, the portrayal of the character. But Baptism of Fire is more lore focused. In a way, you can say it becomes more of a classic fantasy story when it comes to the build up, the world building, the conflicts between the kingdoms and the lore, the history, the magic, etc. That exists in the Witcher world. The Witcher world is, though, even if it's a magical world, it's quite close to uh, the medieval era of Europe, and it's not escapist as other fantasy books. I think you always have a foot in medieval Europe when you are reading this, and that makes the Witch saga also, I think, very interesting and different from a lot of other fantasy. Um, there is obviously a lot of grimdark in this book, but it's grimdark with a twist, maybe if you can say so. There is the grimdark sequences are very grimdark. So all from molestations, and you have atrocities against women during wartime, and you have poverty. You have the ordinary, the common man's belief in magic or in maybe superstition, I would say in this case, want people to help them, but the people surrounding them that can help them have other things to do. So it's a cynical world. People seem to want just to earn money and to gain power. There's not much heart here, not much compassion, and it's very desolate, the Witcher world. Especially, you can check that up by playing the Witcher 3 game, which I think portrays that very good. Um, but still, there's a lot of humor, and I think that actually goes away a bit with the Witcher 3 games so far. But maybe I've just been so focused on progressing the story. I think the overall feeling, Witcher 3 is more Batman-like. I really like Witcher 3. The Dark Knight and so on. Very serious tone. But when you read the books, the tone is not always so serious. There is a lot of room for laughter, and there is a lot of room uh, for scenes that are very beautiful. I think the fellowship that Geralt is in, especially, is very nice. I mean, they are totally dysfunctional. The group, it doesn't work all the time, and I think that there is connection here to the Baldur's Gate 3 if you have played that, because that group is totally dysfunctional. I just wonder if they have read the Witcher saga, because many of the characters in of Geralt's friends reminds me of the composition of characters in Baldur's Gate 3. Um, as I said, I'm very impressed by how Sapkowski connects to storytelling. I think that binds the books together. Sometimes it's character arcs and so on, but I think it's the single stories. You can refer to short story in Sword of Destiny or The Last Wish, and it reminds me about that, and I can recall that, and it does it in a very skillful way. So I think there is a blend between, this book is a blend between, and a whole series so far, between Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings. It's something in between. It hasn't become too grimdark yet to be, off-putting, I would say, for me. But it's not as idyllic and, if you understand me, naive as some earlier fantasy with tropes could be. But it still has the spark of Tolkien's writing. So this is something in between, and I really enjoy that. Um, so we go from individuals in the first book and their character arc to this political intrigue and this lore and magical implications that are on the Witcher world. So now it's integrating the story, I would say, in a very different way from before. It started already in Time of Contempt, but becomes even more obvious in Baptism of Fire that this is epic, this is a saga. But when we start to read the Witcher stories, we really don't get that impression. At least I didn't get that impression. Um, Interesting, I think, with the fellowship idea, which is a theme throughout this video, is that they have to question their loyalties, people in the different fellowships. I think that's an interesting take on the fellowship idea. There are many groups. We want to be part of something, right? We can be, and usually that's a great feeling. But within groups, there are tensions, and that those tensions can depend on desires from people and different goals, for example, different intentions. There is also a lot of social commentary in this book, the whole Witcher saga. It's on war, of course. It's, I would say, on chauvinism and commentary on tropes. What do we expect? As I said, who is the monster? Obvious, but why do we want to have certain kind of monsters? That's a topic for Baptism of Fire. There is perspectives of dehumanization because there is war. So to make war, you have to, unfortunately, there is a war, and unfortunately, when war happens or before war happens, you start to dehumanize people, so people don't feel that strong human connection to those that are going to be attacked. A lot of that in Witcher saga. Sad, of course, but important. Racial hatred is focus of the story, and he uses the short stories technique. I don't want to spoil that story for you, but there is a story in Baptism of Fire which is described from two different perspectives and two different groups. And depending on the group, the story ends differently, and also who's the enemy, who's the evil, who are the evil guys in the story change depending who's telling the story. So I think he highlights that in a great way. Still, I think Sapkowskis is not that great academic person as, for example, Stephen Erickson, which I admire a lot. But he uses his techniques to get in important points about all these things I mentioned. He gives a social commentary on. He actually even gives a social commentary on a very controversial question, especially, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you've read this book, maybe you can understand. In the United States and also in Poland. I don't want to tell you what that is. If you read the book, you know what that is. If you're still here, maybe only you who have read the Witcher books are still left here in the video. So maybe it's safe to at least think about it. What could that be? So all in all, as you hear, I'm very, very happy with Baptism of Fire. I've started to read The Tower of Swallows. Enjoying that so far. Also start with a typical fantasy trope that changes. It's not what you expect. Even if you know that Sapkowskis is doing this, not what you expect, it's usually in the very, very end that the twist comes, and that makes the payoff is extra big, I would say, extra rewarding. Because sometimes when I was reading Baptism of Fire, I thought maybe there will be no twist here, and then I can guess what happens, but then the twist came. So that is my honest thoughts about Baptism of Fire, about the Witcher journey. So far, I have also been able to buy a few Witcher comics. I will come back to that here on the channel when I've read them. And now I want to hear your thoughts on the reflection video, on my Witcher journey, on your Witcher journey, and maybe your specific thoughts on Baptism of Fire. I liked it. Did you? Have a nice day. Bye.